in moving from the plains of Antioch to Mount Lebanon, the stronghold of faith, the Maronite Church did a bold move that marked its standing figure throughout the centuries. Assessing freedom as a basic concept and drawing its equally standing determination to maintain vivid its ardent soul in poverty, learnship, and above all, sanctity. The Maronite Church tied alliance with Rome, not merely in the form of a syncretism, but as a true synthesis that merged the values of Antiochian Church to the dynamic shining of Renaissance Europe. Thus, founding monastic schools that brought knowledge to all the population, initiating and boosting the Arab Renaissance in the 19th and 20th centuries, and is still radiating its values towards the Middle Eastern societies and throughout the world. Today, the Maronite Church is deeply rooted in tradition. At the same time, it projects its message towards the postmodern world. We solicitate His Eminent Beatitude, Patriarch Marpshara Butros Cardinal Rai, Maronite Patriarch of Antioch and all the East, to address the audience his keynote speech under the topic, Consolidating Christian Presence and Role in the Middle East, Solutions and Perspectives.
تسمحوا لنا نكرم اللغة العربية نتفق؟ نحن بعد ما راجعنا النص اللي كنا محضرينه لقينا تقريبا الأفكار عم ترجع هي ذاتها، اضطرينا نعمل نص جديد بالعربي بس رح نكون سريعين جدا لأنه مطران صياح رح يترجم كمان بسرعة. رح يكون تلغرافيك.
So we actually his Beatitude had a prepared text, but we noticed that so many of the things we were going to say had been said, so it was decided that we change, and we have both of us an Arabic text, and we'll try to go quickly through the main points.
أولاً حاضر المسيحيين بالشرق الأوسط.
First, the present situation of Christians in the Middle East.
كلنا بنعرف وبدنا نتذكر إنه حاضر المسيحيين بالشرق الأوسط متأصل بجذوره من 2000 سنة، حضور متنوع بالكنائس كاثوليكية، أرثوذكسية، إنجيلية، بالرهبانيات الرجالية والنسائية، بالمؤسسات التربوية والاجتماعية والاستشفائية والثقافية، بالأديار والكنائس والممتلكات، بالمسيحيين أبناء وبنات هالكنائس اللي هم عاملون في مختلف الحقول بأوطانهم في البلدان الشرق الأوسط، ومساهمون كبار بالتجارة والاقتصاد والمال والإنماء، وأصحاب مصالح ومؤسسات حيوية بهالبلدان والأوطان، ومعروفين بمهارتهم وعلمهم وأخلاقيتهم، وبالتالي أصحاب ثقة. وعلى مستوى الكنائس توجد مجالس ولجان مشتركة ومختلفة ومختلطة تتعاون في مختلف القطاعات وبشكل صوت واحد ويد وحدة. فإذا نحن قوايا بهالشرق الأوسط ما في خوف علينا.
We all know that Christians have been in the Middle East for 2,000 years. Their presence is diversified. You have Catholic, Orthodox, evangelical, Protestant churches. You have religious foundations, women religious institutions, men's religious institutions. You have educational, social institutions, cultural institutions, and you have churches and institutions that are very well rooted in the region. They work and are influential in many fields in their countries and beyond in the Middle East. And they have been contributing a great deal to economy, to trade, to development. They have big institutions. They have institutions that are vital for the countries where they are living, and they are well known for their expertise, for their scientific approaches, for their values, and then the people trust them. And for all the various churches that are there, they have their own institutions also. They have their own internal organizations. They're well organized with their councils, with their committees, and they cooperate in the various fields and in the various parts of their missions. So you can see that we're not weak. We are a strong presence in the Middle East.
طبعا كثير تأملنا اليوم وامبارح انه هالحاضر الحلو والقوي في له تهديدات ومهدد بالهجرة، بتراجع العدد، بضعف التأثير المسيحي في المجتمعات بسبب الحروب والنزاعات والأزمات الأمنية والاقتصادية والسياسية، رجاجة الاستقرار. لكن نحن بقى نعرف نواجه هالتهديدات بالشكل اللي نحن نحكي عنه بعد شوي.
Yes, this presence is strong, but we feel also that recently this presence has been threatened somehow, threatened by immigration, threatened by demography, threatened by less of an influential voice in the region, in their countries, because of the wars and conflicts and all the crises that have to do with the economy, with politics, and all this has shaken the stability, and this has made life more difficult.
ثاني نقطة مستقبلهم بالشرق الأوسط.
Second point, their future in the Middle East.
أولا خلينا نقول إنه المسيحيين ليسوا أقلية إثنية أو دينية، بل هم كنيسة المسيح الحاضرة في بلدان الشرق الأوسط من 2000 سنة. مستقبلهم مضمون بقوة الكنيسة وبقوة المسيح القائم من الموت. إذن هم أبناء الرجاء.
First of all, we have to emphasize that Christians are not a religious minority. They are part of the universal church. It's the universal church present in the countries of the Middle East for the past 2,000 years. Their future is secure. It's secure through the strength of the universal church, through the strength of Jesus Christ rising from the dead. They are sons and daughters of hope.
مستقبلنا كمسيحيين بالشرق الأوسط مرتبط بالتزامنا بالمحافظة على هويتنا الدينية والثقافية، على تراثاتنا الليتورجية والتاريخية والاجتماعية، على رسالتنا بنشر إنجيل السلام المركز على الحقيقة والحرية والمحبة والعدالة. وهيدي قيم منجسدها نحن مع كل المسيحيين بمختلف قطاعات أعمالنا ونشاطاتنا.
Of course, their future is linked and is subject to their commitment to the capacity of holding on to their spiritual and cultural identity. It's linked with their ability to secure and keep intact their liturgical heritage, their history, their social lives, and especially through the implementation of their witness, the message they have to give, the message of the gospel, the message based on truth, on liberty, on love, and on justice. Such values they try to incarnate in their behavior and in the work of their institutions in the various fields.
من أجل ضمانة مستقبلهم يحتاج المسيحيون إلى مزيد من الوحدة والتضامن بين المقيمين والمنتشرين على كل المستويات، بحاجة إلى ترابط ودعم بين المقيمين بأوطاننا والمنتشرين روحيا وماديا ومعنويا. 3 كمان التعريف بالمسيحيين بمجتمعاتكم الانتشار بأهمية وجودهم بالشرق الأوسط بقضية أوطانهم. هالتعريف أكيد بيقوم فيه المسيحيين الشرقيين المنتشرين، بيقوموا فيه لدى المسؤولين الكنسيين والمدنيين والسياسيين في بلدان الانتشار.
In order to secure their future, the Christians need to have a greater unity with the Christians who are in the expansion, unity between those living in the Middle Eastern countries and those living in the expansion, and they need to secure the support of the Christians that are in the expansions spiritually, materially, and morally. And they ask their brothers and sisters in the expansion to make the identity and realities of their churches known, to explain the importance of the Christian presence in the countries of the Middle East, and also to emphasize such values and such realities to the people in charge in those countries, to the church people, to the politicians, and to all those who have any influence in those countries.
من أجل هالغاية الكنائس الأم بتأسس بعالم الانتشار رعايا ورسالات وأبرشيات ومؤسسات، والكنائس الانتشار اللي موجودة تعمل على لم الشمل، على الجمع، من أجل المحافظة على هويتنا، هوية كل كنيسة، على تقاليدها، على التضامن، على التعاون. وبيقوم كنائس الانتشار بمبادرات متنوعة للربط بين المقيمين والمنتشرين. ولذلك يطلب من المسيحيين المنتشرين تسجيل وقوعات نفوسهم الشخصية، الولادة والزواج والوفاة، والمحافظة على جنسيتهم الأصلية، لأن الجنسية بتضمن لهم كل حقوقهم المدنية بأوطانهم الأم، ولأنه أنتم بتعرفوا كمان أنه أوطاننا قايم تنظيمها السياسي على الديموغرافيا. لذلك لما تتسجلوا ولو أنتم هون بالانتشار بتساعدوا كتير وجودنا على المستوى السياسي، تنضم مؤيدين إننا موجودين وإلنا دور بأوطاننا.
So in order to secure this future, the churches, the mother churches, institute parishes and missions and dioceses, of course, in the countries of the diaspora, and they work with their people in those parishes and missions to try to keep their identity, to make sure they do not lose their heritage, and to make sure also they keep this cooperation with the people they left behind in the home country. They have to take initiatives to link both parties, those who are in the expansion. We don't call it diaspora, by the way, we call it expansion. And we ask them to try to help strengthen those links. And the churches ask the Christians, their people in those countries, to make sure they register their marriages, They register their children when they're born, and they register also their deaths, and they are urged to keep their nationality because their nationality is a guarantee for their civil rights in their home country, and it is also a guarantee for a demographic balance in their countries, because the political systems in those countries are based on demographic representation.
عندنا كلمة شكر واقتراح، لأن المسيحيين المنتشرين عندهم دور فعال بالمحافظة على الوجود المسيحي في بلدان الشرق الأوسط. أولاً بدنا نشكرهم على كل المساعدات المالية اللي عم بيقدموها لأهلهم بأوطانهم، بدنا نشكرهم على كل الدعم المالي للمشاريع الإنمائية في بلدانهم ومدنهم وبلداتهم، بناء كنائس، قاعات رعوية، أندية ثقافية ورياضية ومشاريع إنمائية وخلق فرص عمل. نحن بنقول شكرا لكل المنتشرين لأنه عم بيدعموا كتير أهلهم وقراهم بمساعداتهم.
Two things we want to say to our people in the expansion. First of all, a word of thanks, and then a request. First, we thank them for all the help, material and otherwise, that they send to their people, they provide to their people in the homeland. And also we thank them for supporting the projects there, building of churches, building of clubs, public halls, and also projects that keep young people there and also give them the opportunity to grow within their own environment, and also in order to help create new jobs for them.
في اقتراح دائما بنفكر فيه، وامبارح التقيت اشخاص ركزوا عليه، هو انشاء صندوق مالي ما. هل الصندوق المالي كيف بده يكون؟ بفكر فيه بيدعم الوجود المسيحي في بلدان الشرق الاوسط بدلا من تسهيل هجرتهم. ونطلب من المنتشرين ما يسحبوا اهلهم كلهم لهون، ونطلب منهم يساعدوهم يبقوا. وهالصندوق بيخلق مشاريع انمائيه، بيوفر فرص عمل، بيدعم العائلات الفقيره بتعليم اولادهم، بالتطبيق، بالاستشفاء، بيحافظ على الوجود المسيحي في القرى الاصليه وخاصه بالجبال، حتى نحافظ على الحياه العامه بضياعنا، ونحافظ على تقاليدنا وروابطنا العائليه على الارض والاخلاق الاصيله. هيدا مشروع لازم نفكر فيه على مستوى يمكن كل كنيسه، لكن لازم ندعم هذا الحضور.
So number one, we thank them for what they're doing. Secondly, we propose that a fund be created to support the Christian presence in the countries of the Middle East instead of facilitating their emigration. And we ask them again to help and not to bring along all the members of the family who wish to stay in the homeland. This fund will create projects that will create jobs and will support families in need, will support education, will support hospitalization, will help again keep the Christians in their villages, and especially in areas that are away from the city, in order to really keep the life going in those villages, and especially to help keep the heritage, make sure that the good traditions, family bonds are kept and are developed And those are really very important values, family values, that we very much wish.
وبختم بالقول المأثور بيعنينا كلنا اللي بيقول المستقبل هو في يد الذين يزرعون بذور الرجاء في القلوب ولا سيما في قلوب الشباب والأجيال الطالعة.
I wish to conclude with a word that has become well known. The future is in the hands of those who sow seeds of hope in the hearts, especially seeds of hope in the hearts of young people and growing generations.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Eminent Beatitude, for drawing this fresco that recalls the past in order to extrapolate future sustainable perspectives. The great Melkite Church has its own raison d'être in the will to restore Christian unity. Byzantium and Rome were finally reconciled, but culturally distinct. The old Byzantine tradition of the Melkite Church is confirmed and vivified, producing masterpieces of Oriental art since the 17th century, and professing knowledge and an open-minded modernity to Aleppo, to Damascus, to Beirut, contributing to their mutation from stagnant urban spaces to cosmopolitan, radiating cities. We solicitate His Beatitude, Gregorius III, Laham, Melkite Greek Catholic Patriarch of Antioch and all the East, Alexandria and Jerusalem, to address the audience his keynote speech under the topic Christians in the Middle East, Presence, Role, Vision.
بسم الآب والابن والروح القدس الإله الواحد. Amen. I would like to say to every you, Sabah al-Khair, good morning, a happy day. We are in the third day of this meeting, the day of resurrection, Yom al-Qiyamah. I greet with love and faith and hope the brothers and sisters who founded this IDC as an organization with the power of the faith and hope and love. This is their aim. The name of this organization is wonderful, is reflect this power of faith, love, and hope, and the force, the power of the resurrection. May I propose to add under subtitle what is the title of my presentation: Presence, Role, Vision. So it means why you defend them, so that remain present, so that can fulfill the role and give a vision to the world. This is, I think, a very important. I hope, inshallah, you can accept this presentation. I would like also to be sensitive. I wrote little reflection flying to Washington. Today is the feast of the Nativity of the Virgin Mary, 8th of September. This feast brings glad tidings to the universe. My prayer is for joy to fill the hearts of this birth of Mary, of millions of people in our Arab countries, millions, not only Christians, which are so filled with worries, fears, suffering, and tragedy that impact lives both in public and private. While spreading hope and joy in Christian Valley, I was making a pastoral visit. I could not help noticing the profound suffering of displaced persons. So they are safe where they are laboring under the weight of cares, afflictions, very painful memories concerning their homes, relatives, possessions, and their own and their children's future. Today, my fellow patriarchs and I are flying to Washington on this godly journey to the United States. What have we to say to the Americans here? Well, I am content to be on the way of the cross to Washington, along with our country's parishes and fellow citizens. We bear the sufferings and expectations of them all, as the Second Vatican Council affirms, and as St. Paul said so eloquently, if somebody is sorrow, we have to be with him. My contribution before the greatest power among the nations is meant to be a spiritual initiative and witness in favor of peace in our region, is security, living in peace together among the various constituents, especially the young people. And I can say a word as a slogan for the responsibility of all of us in this very difficult situation. A word I saw in a hospital. It is said, woe, who, if not us? Where, if not there? When, if not now? It is, I think, a slogan for responsibility, all of us. We, here and today. So it is be using this slogan in many places, in preaches in the churches, to tell people that we are all responsible to go out of this difficult situation. And I am putting this slogan to the West with love and trust. And I am also putting this to the East, to Arab countries, kings, princes, state presidents, and heads of governments. I am really very hopeful that the patriarch's voice may be heard, as was the prophets and sages. Our visit and participation represent a historic step in the annals of the Church. Today, the Church, more than any other society, entity, institution, or organizations, bears this responsibility. And as patriarchs, we ought to continue our initiative at every level, knocking on every door of hearts to change the inclination of states in international organizations. Yes, the Church must offer every sacrifice, take every step, regardless of cost, for it represents the roots and foundation of Christians and Muslim Arab society. It is called to bring about peace in the region in order to be worthy of the beatitude shown by its master and founder among peacemakers. Inshallah, we can be all peacemakers, and we call America to be peacemakers and not war makers. This is the greatest and most sublime goal of all the mysteries of our Christian faith, the incarnation, to be responsible for the salvation of the world. The unified and harmonized voice of the Eastern Patriarchs, who share a common vision, has as its goal to be the trigger for a global and really ecumenical Christian consensus on the East. Thus, the Church's voice will be on both in the East and in the West. We hope, as the patriarchs are together, all denominations, we can go ahead and see one voice of the Catholic Church, the Pope, Holy Father, the bishop conferences, then go ahead to the Orthodox Church and churches, and go ahead to the Anglican and Lutheran Church. That must be so that sometime we can reach this goal to have one declaration of all churches in the world for the peace in the Middle East. And now, as I like to go ahead to the title of this presentation, also the first, the role. One word about the role of Christians. I can say we affirm that all religious concur in the principle of freedom of human beings having an absolute personal value and of equality of all men, even if the application differ. Now, we have to discover our role instead of fearing for our future, rights, duties, and privileges, and especially in the following matters: protection of pluralism and the culture of pluralism. We have to do, not to fear that it is not there. And the preservation of Arabness. We have to make common cause with progressive Muslim groups so that they can move forward alongside with us. We ought to preach, to spread the church's very rich social teaching dating back to the end of the 19th century. Arab Christians should work together without fear or hesitation for the Arab world to regain strong international unity. For this is our own world's unity. The Arab world is the throes of a very difficult birth giving. We are responsible to give a good birth for this new man in the Arab world. I have unshakable confidence that we can do something in Islamic world, that Islamic reason capacity to hold modern culture, we have to do that with them. It is sufficiently flexible, I hope, to reconcile the text of Sharia with modern demands. We should collaborate in nurturing Arab humanity. We all ought to try to bring about a truth of life. We have to reject the logic of war and power as a selfish, murderous rationale. I am launching this appeal to the whole world in the name of the poor, weak, widows, victims, mortally wounded, mutilated, disfigured, displaced persons, refugees, homeless, hungry, children, the elderly, pregnant women, handicapped, and all those in despair, pain, and discouragement, such as I often encounter at the Syrian-Lebanese border when traveling from Beirut to Damascus or during my visits to families of victims and disaster-stricken people. They are burdened by fear about the future and the fate of their families, children, and young people. We tell everyone, quite frankly, war has not succeeded in the Middle East 3.5 years. Violence has not succeeded. Weapons have not succeeded. Arming groups with all sorts of weapons hasn't succeeded. The falsified publicity propaganda has not succeeded. The projects of certain Arab and European countries have not succeeded. Economic sanctions have not succeeded. Treaties of iron and fire have not succeeded. Alliances have not succeeded. Given all these failures, isn't time for the world to realize that no one wins through war? And in conclusion, I would like to say the significance of our presence is above all not as an inward-looking community as Christians, as though we were on an island or in a ghetto. Of course, we can live as Christians everywhere in the world, but the real challenge for us is to live our Christianity in the Arab Middle East, which is predominantly Muslim, though still is the cradle of Christianity. We have to live not here, but there. So we are a church with and for. This is a word of St. John Paul II, a church with and for. We have been really for this Arab world, and as I mentioned, we are the main actors in Arab history. Just as we have really been in the past agents of Arab culture and civilization, and even of Arabism and secular movements in the history of the Arab world, so we are called to be again nowadays. And then I like to give a slogan, I like to repeat: we Christians and Muslims ought to remain together in order to build a better world for our young generations. Second, we Christians and Muslims can stay together to build a better world for our young generations, as we have already done for 1,400 years. Third, we Christian Muslims want to stay together in order to build a better world for our young generations. We must, we can, we like to do that. And I am always saying to my people abroad, and I say to everybody Christian where he is, dear parishioners, stay in the Middle East so that the church can stay here. Stay so that the Christianity can remain here. Stay so that Christ can stay here. Stay so that the gospel can stay here. Stay so that living together can remain here. Stay so that plurality can stay here. Stay so that we can remain with our Christians and Muslim brothers and sisters and fellow citizens from all communities, Christians, Jews, and Muslims, and let us build together a better world for our young generations. As I was visiting Ground Zero years ago, I said 2 words there. I am saying here the mystery of evil, mysterium iniquitatis. But we have to look to the mystery of the resurrection, mysterium resurrectionis. We have to consider that we are the children, not of death. The title of the first Christian in the Middle East, especially in Mesopotamia, in Iraq today, was the children of the resurrection. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Beatitude, for the expression of this will of fraternity and message of hope. From the plains of Antioch to the Tur Abdin, the Mount of the Worshippers. That's how we can translate it. Then through Asia up to India, the Syriac Orthodox Church flourished in sanctity as well as in literacy, boosting medieval culture and pertaining its values up to the modern world. We solicitate His Holiness More Ignatius Aphrem II, Syriac Orthodox Patriarch of Antioch, to address the audience his keynote speech under the title, Do Muslims Need Christians in the Middle East?
Good morning. I'd like to start by offering some observations about the long history of the relationship between Muslims and Christians in the Middle East. Muslims were welcomed to many major cities in what is today Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Iraq by Christians. Christians in these lands were under military occupation of Byzantium. Religiously, they were also persecuted by their co-religionists for refusing to accept the Chalcedonian definitions, the Christological definitions of the Council of Chalcedon. Therefore, the Muslim invaders were received as liberators. Local Christians were employed by the new Muslim rulers during especially the Umayyad and Abbasid states to run the affairs of the state, such as the state Dawawin departments. Christians helped establish the infrastructure of the new state. Christians became the transmitters of knowledge in different fields of science. In particular, the Syriac translators played a major role in transmitting the knowledge of the Syriac and Greek scholars. They translate the major works of philosophy, medicine, algebra, and other sciences into Arabic language. In recent history, Christians played a leading role in the education of the Arab masses. Through their liaison with European schools, Christian scholars were pioneers in introducing printing machines, publishing magazines and periodicals, as well as establishing colleges and institutions of higher education. Politically, Christian scholars and intellectuals contributed to the establishment of many political parties. Even the Ba'ath Party and the National Social Syrian Party were established by Christians. These observations should not be taken, however, to mean that Christians had always enjoyed peaceful existence and great freedom under Muslim rule. Many of them, Christians, were forced to convert as a result of the imposition of heavy jizya, poll tax, on them. They also endured many periods of persecution, especially during the Mughal and Ottoman times. The genocide of Armenians and Syriac-speaking Christians and Greeks and others during the World War I resulted in the extermination of millions of Christians. In fact, we all are commemorating these tragic events throughout next year as the 100th anniversary of these awful atrocities. I believe that Muslims need Christians to challenge themselves to live in a pluralistic and multi-religious society where they can affirm their religious identity without being afraid of the other. Muslims ought to be able to embrace the values of tolerance and acceptance of the other as a sign of self-confidence. To prove that Islam as a religion can coexist with other religions without the need to absorb others or the fear that it may be absorbed by others. Living in isolation will keep Muslims ignorant of the others, and ignorance is the mother of all fears. Ignorance will lead to the fear of the other whom they do not know. Fear, in turn, will lead to the rejection of others, which is mostly expressed in violence, being biased, discriminating against, and expulsion of the others, not to mention killing and total elimination of the other elements of the same society. Today, Daesh, ISIS, and other extreme organizations are hijacking Islam. It's up to the Islamic world to come out and declare their position vis-à-vis these groups. It's high time for Muslim scholars and religious leaders to prove to the world that these groups do not represent true Muslim teachings. Hence, Muslim scholars and religious leaders have to strive to present appropriate interpretations of certain religious texts that may be interpreted in a way which may serve the agenda of certain groups who consider non-Muslims as Ahl Dhimma, Dhimmites. Muslims need Christians to fight together extremism. Muslims need Christians to fight together secularism, a common enemy of all believers from all religions. Muslims need Christians to fight together commercialism. The human being has become a commodity being sold. We have to come together to restore back the dignity of human beings as the image of God on earth. Living together should be conceived by Muslims and Christians alike as a divine vision and plan. We Christians believe that God has placed us in that region with the mission of spreading love, tolerance, and enlightenment. Muslims, on the other hand, have clear religious texts which declare that had God wanted, he would have created all peoples of the same convictions. But he made them different so that they may get to know each other. It's up to them to live up to these texts. I conclude, in respect of time, I conclude by calling upon the international community to help us Christians stay in our homeland, in the land that our forefathers for 2 millennia witnessed for Christ, and for many millennia lived as the people, indigenous people of that land. We call upon the international community, the superpowers, the United Nations Security Councils, to help Christians stay and live where they are, because at the end, even if we look at it from a commercial point of view, it's much more economic for Europe and America to keep Christians in their homeland than to bring them to Europe and to America to live. But by calling upon them to help us stay in our homeland, we also want them to work hard to make sure that these Christians should be protected, should be provided with dignity, with honor, and should not be subject to attacks such as we are seeing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for this dynamic proposal of contribution between Christianity and Islam. أبوند مشمايو نتقدش شموخ. When I heard His Beatitude Ignatius Youssef III Younan chanting this prayer in the language of Christ, in the language Christ has spoken, I felt the perpetual flame of Christian tradition shine in the Syriac Church. Syriac was more than a language. It was a full-scale culture that preserved and transmitted to Islam the knowledge of antiquity. From the 17th century onwards, the Syriac Catholic Church established a link between the medieval world and the rising dynamic Europe in coping with the Catholic missions and founding her own, thus contributing to the cultural and economical radiation of cities like Aleppo and extending the presence of her active communities up to Kerala. We solicitate His Beatitude Ignatius Youssef III Younan Syriac Catholic Patriarch of Antioch and all the East, to address the audience his keynote speech under the topic Advocacy for Christian Survival in the Middle East.
Thank you, Professor Alexis. I don't know if you ever heard about these three words, argumentum ad hominem. Argumentum ad hominem, usually used in the philosophy, even theology, to say that some argument, reasoning, addressed to the ordinary man, not really to his intelligence, but it's taken out of the daily experience. Now, I would like to record or mention again happening events in Kurdistan that was in December 2012, following the riots of radical fundamentalists in Kurdistan back in December 2011, in which some hotels and liquor stores of Christians and other minorities, non-Muslim minorities, were attacked and burned. The president of that autonomous region, Kurdistan, gathered religious leaders and spoke to them quite frankly. We have to respect people's freedom, even when they are different from us. You permit, he was addressing to the Muslim sheikh and mullahs, you permit polygamy, and they allow drinking wine. These are particularities of you and them that we all have to recognize. We spoke a lot about that hecatomb that fell on northern Iraq for the past 3 months, and I am not going to repeat what it was well said by my brother patriarchs. However, I have to tell you that you're doing very good job in uniting so many of your brothers and sisters coming from different countries and also belonging to various churches, what we call in Latin sui juris. That means they have their particular rights and traditions. And I commend you, and especially those who did organize this summit. I would like just to focus on 2 calls, since we have treating this problem or this issue of our survival as Christians in the Middle East. The first call I have to send it to our brothers in the Muslim religion, especially the religious leaders, since they don't agree with what did happen of atrocities committed by the so-called Daesh and other extremist radical groups. It is time for you to stand up to give a common statement signed by all of you to condemn those atrocities against Christians and other minorities. Yes, you have in your holy book verses that praise the people of the book, and you have also other verses that remind them or you that at least some of the people of books, they are polytheists. Remember that verse, what was in the past few years repeated so much, come to a common word. It says in that verse, يا أهل الكتاب تعالوا إلى كلمة سواء ألا تشركوا في الله أحدا. So there were 138 Muslim scholars. They sent a letter, a long letter to the heads of churches, beginning with Pope Benedict, to tell them that we come together to be reconciled in one common word. But they did miss to mention the second part of that verse. They are considering us as polytheists, and we don't accept that qualification. Therefore, we need them, beginning by the Azhar al-Sharif and the Aidan Qum al-Sharif, to gather, to unite their, let's say, partners or affiliated leaders, to tell them it's time not only to condemn, but also to tell that everyone has the intention or does kill the people of the book is communicated by our religion. The second call, I would send it to the family of nations, especially to the Western countries. And it is for me, it is a topic that I cherish a lot. Believe me, there is no difference between what IS, Daesh, and other radical Muslim factions, no difference in their bylaws or in their aim than of that motto of the Muslim Brotherhood. And you know that the Muslim Brotherhood was lately, for the past 2 years, this have been repudiated by the Egyptian people, by the Saudi kingdom, by many of the Gulf's Emirates, that they were following, I am talking about the Muslim Brotherhood, a political Islam that doesn't exclude violent means to go to power, to try to get the power or the government. Their motto is well clear. Allah is our objective. The Prophet is our leader. The Quran is our law. Jihad is our way. This is the motto of the Muslim Brotherhood. So the family of nations, they have to understand that this same organization that have been promoted by the United States and some European countries, and they did welcome many of them as refugees, they are professing violence and one religion in their countries where they have majority or on the political scene. So what we can say to our people, if we don't ask for the separation of religion and state, since you have many interpretations of how to understand the word jihad, and many interpretations how to apply the Islamic Sharia. That means it will be a time they will be using those jihad and Sharia against other religious minorities living among them. This is, dear friends, very important issue. We have to work on it in a matter with perseverance to tell, for instance, the United States that you have well in your First Amendment of the Constitution, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. Therefore, we can't say that the Muslim Brotherhood and other political parties that profess the Islam as their motto, we can't say that they are professing or following the separation of religion and state. I remember when I was visiting North Iraq, Kurdistan, with my brother, His Beatitude Ignatius Aphrem, Karim. Believe me, the question that we were hearing the most was this: Patriarch, will we ever return to our homes? This was the most what we call heard question. If the international family, especially United States, European Union, and Russia, do not really take seriously this question or this topic of separating religion and state in the Arab countries, telling them that you have the example of Lebanon to follow, where all religions are where all religions, confessions are respected, and where you have separation of religion and state. And if still will be a continuous amalgam between religion and state in our countries of the Middle East, I have to tell you, I have no answer to those anxious questions of our people in northern Iraq. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Beatitude. Deeply rooted in literacy as well as in aesthetics, the Armenian Church confirmed its devoted consistency amid the turmoils and persecutions. Marking its personality in heroic stance, architecture embodies its figure, cut in stone since a millennium and a half and still onwards till the end of times. For the last speech of this panel, we solicitate His Holiness Aram I Keshishian, Catholicos of the Holy See of the Great House of Cilicia of the Armenian Apostolic Church, to address the audience his keynote speech under the topic, The Future of Christianity in the Middle East, Vision and Plan of Action.
As you see, I am the last speaker, but I am far away to say the last word. we are before an extremism that not only embraces the region, our churches, communities, and the societies, but in a sense, the whole world. It threatens the very survival of Christianity in the Middle East. Therefore, if we fail to take collective and swift action to contain and stop its onslaught, the Middle East will be transformed into a haven for radicalism, fundamentalism, and other isms of far-reaching consequences. We must commit ourselves to a common and long-term effort. Extremism cannot be defeated only by military action. A comprehensive and coherent short-term and long-term global strategy must include political, economic, diplomatic, and military actions. As patriarchs and representatives of the churches in the region, we are not here only to lament our suffering, to describe the situation that we are facing in the region, or to highlight the concerns and problems of our people, but we are here to seek together the most efficient ways and means by which we can combat together extremism and save Christianity in the Middle East. Therefore, I believe that we have to go beyond reacting. We have to become more proactive. We have to go beyond describing the situation and try to see with a forward-looking vision what plan of action can we together develop in order to strengthen the centuries-old presence of Christianity in the Middle East. Therefore, within this context and with this perspective in mind, I would like to share with you briefly 6 points. 1, democratization is crucial for the future of Christianity in the Middle East. Let's face it, regime change should not be considered as the ultimate goal of democracy. If elimination of poverty, restoration of justice, and respecting of human rights do not follow regime change, then it becomes simply cosmetic and counterproductive. In order to avoid violence and radicalization, democratization must emanate from within, not be imposed from without. It requires education and awareness building. It also entails an accurate and comprehensive grasp of concrete realities of the region and a deep analysis of the region's strengths and vulnerabilities and a carefully planned strategy. The Christian communities in the Middle East are caught between autocracy and extremism. We must advocate for a model of society that respects fundamental human rights and protects ethnic and religious diversities. Our commitment goes for a democratic, participatory and just society with inclusive governance. Indeed, democracy can become a bulwark against extremism. It may also ensure the future of Christianity in the Middle East and lead the whole region to a better future. Number two, Christians are integral and inseparable parts of the societies of the Middle East. The autocratic regimes that preceded the Arab Spring, like the Ottomans under the Millet system, considered the Christian communities as minorities with limited internal freedom. Although Christians played a significant part in promoting Arab nationalism, they were never considered as equal citizens in the region with equal rights and obligations. Christians have never and will never accept to live as second-class citizens in the Arab world. They are deeply rooted in the history of the Middle East and refuse to be marginalized and be considered simply as minorities living on the periphery of the society life. Number three, pluralism will ensure a peaceful coexistence of communities. By promoting pluralism, we may combat extremism and help building peaceful cohabitation and a coherent integration of all segments of society. Extremism rejects all forms of pluralism, and by doing so, violates the right of people to be different, to preserve their specificities, while coexisting with others in mutual respect and acceptance. Only democracy can protect pluralism, and in turn, only pluralism can safeguard the Christian presence in the Middle East. Hence, pluralism must be promoted. Religious, political, ethnic, and cultural diversity must be respected, and equal obligations and the rights of all people as co-citizens, irrespective of their religious, confessional, cultural identities, must be protected and constitutionally guaranteed. Number four, cohabitation among monotheistic religions is imperative for the future of the Middle East. The three monotheistic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, share common roots, common traditions, and common values. They have a common history characterized by both conflict and peaceful coexistence. The common concerns that these religions face in the Middle East should drive their partnership and collaboration on issues of common concern. Because religion in the region have such a strong impact, close collaboration among monotheistic religions can help to transform the societies in the right direction. Reshaping the Middle East is a common responsibility. Actors of civil society, particularly religions, must be partners in combating this global danger in order to build a culture of life that promotes peace with justice and the quality of life sustained by moral and spiritual values. Number five, the continuous support of diaspora communities is indispensable. The churches of the Middle East must not be left alone. We are mother churches in the Middle East, and we are in dire need of support of our diaspora communities. The diaspora is a critical asset. Its human, economic, and political potential must be effectively channeled towards the mother churches of the Middle East. Our diaspora communities, therefore, can play a tremendous role by supporting and enhancing and strengthening the Christian presence in the Middle East. Finally, number 6. Comprehensive and consistent policy towards the Middle East is an urgent necessity. Although Western governments have reacted with a firm unanimity to the terror of extremists in Iraq, the reaction of the Western media and politicians to the plight of Christians has been weak. Humanitarian aid has been forthcoming, but Christians are not looking for humanitarian aid. They are seeking humanitarian action to save the Christianity in the Middle East. For the Western powers to truly help, they must act not only where and when their vital interests are at stake, but where and when basic human rights and values are ignored and violated. The policy of the West towards the Middle East, which seems to waver between engagement and disengagement, has failed to grasp the complexities and interconnectedness and inner layers of regional realities. The West must shift from reactive to proactive, from crisis management to crisis prevention policy. In fact, crisis prevention is easier, less costly, and more effective than crisis management. The Western powers must develop a policy towards the Middle East which is comprehensive and consistent, contextual and holistic, which is based on accurate assessment of the realities of the region, and which reconcile the strategic interest with basic human rights and values. Indeed, the future of the Middle East and the Christian communities will be ensured when its states and societies are built on plurality, equality, and liberty. And finally, dear friends, Christianity is on the verge of disappearing from the Middle East, where for centuries it has existed in harmony with Judaism and Islam. The people of the world should realize that the end of Christianity in this region would be a terrible blow for the future of the whole region. It would mean that intolerant ideologies and terrorism will prevail. And the Christians of the Middle East, in their turn, must realize that there is no future for Christianity in this region except in partnership and in close collaboration among monotheistic religions to face together common concerns and challenges facing our region.
Thank you, Your Holiness, for this concluding speech that draws a fulfilled future and a sustained one. Now the panel ends. You have a short break and then the second program. Thank you, Your Beatitude.